people. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. On this beautiful day of June 8th, 2023. Today we have four phenomenal authors that have joined us. Their book is called Transitioning to the Other Side, Coping with Loss. And I'm just going to give you a brief description of each author because they're all phenomenal authors, and I want to give you a little bit of their background. Ivy Caldwell is a wife, mother, grandmother, 23-time author, and 10-time best-selling author, international speaker, certified empowerment life coach, an ordained elder, Christian counselor, TV and podcast host. She is the founder of Footprint Enterprises, which serve women and youth through her coaching program called Stepping into a New You. She empowers those who are ready to heal from emotional trauma to gain back their voice, authority, confidence, and freedom. She is bringing healing to the hurting through hope. It is possible to not feel the pains of the past. To connect with Ivy, you can do so on her website, footprintenterprisesllc.com, and that's all lowercase letters. Katrina Rudolph is a dedicated servant of the Most High God. She is a faithful wife, devoted mother of 3 daughters, sister, aunt, confidant, and friend. Katrina has worked as a registered nurse for over 22 years. During her tenure, she has observed varying stages of death, assisted people from transitioning from this life to the next, and supported grieving families. Witnessing the physical absence of someone so close is much different than witnessing this transition as a healthcare provider. Katrina prays that her experience serves as an encouragement to others in bereavement and is a testament to God's goodness. Katrina Clark is an up-and-coming serial author. She has already collaboratively written 2 books, one titled Bruised But Still Beautiful, and her most recent, joining us today, Transitioning to the Other Side, Volume 2. She is currently working on another collaboration with a group of women of Black Women Confidential. She will also be releasing her own story later this year. Katrina is the business owner of Louisa 57, a coaching practice dedicated to helping people mind your mind, and a host of Mind Movements with Coach Katrina, talk show host. She holds several certifications, including that of a life coach and a bachelor's in psychology. Sandra Jackson is the 12th child of the late Bishop Samuel I. Rumpf and elected lady Priscilla M. Rumpf. She is an enthusiastic and self-motivated author, life insurance agent and facilitator, panelist and ordained evangelist. She is a divorced mother of 9 adorable children. On May 29, 2021, she earned her bachelor's degree in theology and biblical studies. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And Miss Ivy, if you could maybe tell us a little bit about your book.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Transitioning to the Other Side came about when I lost my mom in 2021. I had thought it would be good to honor my mother along with some of the other women at my church. Out of volume 1, I was the last one to lose my mom, so I thought it would be a good way for us to come together and to connect with one another, even on a deeper level, getting to understand what we went through when our moms passed away. So that is how Transitioning to the Other Side got started.
Now, everyone, including yourself, who contributed to this book, did you find that you had any struggles when you were writing your story?
I did not have any struggles at all.
Katrina or Sandra, did you find that sometimes, when you're I think that when you're going through something personally, that, you deal with it in a certain way, you kind of rationalize maybe things in a certain way, and it's kind of easy, as you go along, coping with it. And then suddenly when you have to write the reality and the facts and exactly what happened in your story as to how it happened and not how you'd like to kind of perceive it in your mind, can be a bit of a struggle to actually get your story out there and to say that. And I was just wondering if anybody else found it really easy because they were ready to write their story, or if there was something about it that just, yeah, they had a couple of stumbling blocks. Sandra?
Yes, thank you so much. That's an excellent question. Believe it or not, when I was writing this time, I had a little bit of struggle dealing with the reality of the loss, you know? Sometimes you think you're healed, whole, and complete, and you delve into the memory of it, you know? And that's when you find out, wow, this really hurts. It stings. I thought I was over it, but I'm not. I lost a brother. So I wrote about 4 different losses in this book.
Yes.
So it wasn't the same with all of them, but my brother that drowned in the pool, it was very difficult this time to write about him.
I know you did mention that in your book that, when you got a phone call, I believe it was from your sister, that, you've been going for so long and it seemed like you had it together and you had handled that situation. And then hearing her voice, that was like a trigger for you.
Exactly. I was at work, minding my own business. I was an assistant manager at Champion Factory Outlet in Rochester, New York. Loved my job. But all of a sudden the phone rang. I didn't answer the phone. One of my bosses answered. And when they said, Sandra, someone's on the phone for you. And when I said hello and heard her voice, it's just like something, like tears just started popping out of my eyes. I started crying uncontrollably. I was embarrassed because I didn't really know what was going on, but then afterwards, like an hour, 2 hours later, they allowed me, which I want to tell them thank you. And their names are Mr. Belcher and Aaron Kleino. They allowed me to sit in the back until I regrouped and was able to go back out on the floor. So sometimes when you're grieving, you need compassionate people around you.
Yes.
That is there to support you. I couldn't even speak, right? I had to write what was going on in my head on a piece of paper. And they were very supportive. They kept saying, Sandra, what is wrong? What is wrong? And I'm just grateful that they were there and understanding enough to know that I was in a comfortable place. So, yeah.
I think sometimes too, when we have something that happens like that, we tend to compartmentalize things and we put them in different boxes inside ourselves and we say, okay, we're okay right now. We're going to deal with that later. And then it doesn't take much for the box to spring open. And then suddenly it's like, well, later is now.
When you least expect.
Yes.
Mhm.
Another loss, Sandra, since I have you here, that you talked about was your sister. If you could tell us one of your fondest memories of your sister.
My fondest memory is, and you're talking about evangelist Jacqueline Marie Rum. She was a renowned evangelist, traveled around the globe, but when she would come home, she would gift us. She brought gifts for everybody. My fondest memory is her teaching me how to drive. All right. And she said this statement to me. She said, Sandra, tell yourself you don't know how to drive and you don't know what you're doing. That was difficult in the moment, but it was true. What she was doing was deprogramming me from other people's training. You see what I'm saying? So she could train me the correct way. And so I said, Sandra, you don't know what you're doing. And so it was hilarious. We laughed, we had an awesome time, but she took her time and strategically taught me how to drive. And today I have an impeccable driving record because she took her time and did it the right way. I also went to, driving school in school, but unfortunately my teacher didn't train me. He had several other people and I only got like 10 or 15 minutes during that session every time, and it was not enough to teach me the logistics, all of what I needed to know.
Yes.
And so I was grateful for Jackie for taking that time out and teaching me how to drive. Now I teach my other girls how to drive. And so, yeah, I'm excited about that.
Do you have any fond memories that you wanted to share about your brother?
My brother, Rod, was an amazing person. He went to the Marines, and so he was served our country, and we're grateful for that. Roderick was tall, dark, and handsome. He had dimples, he was a ladies' man. But he was also married, and he had a few children, and the children are still here with us. And so we celebrate them as well, because without his legacy, we would have had nothing. And so Roderick worked the night shift, and he would, he paid me to run his bath water. So when he came home, it was ready for him to get. And he would also bring home chicken and fries and different meals. And we would have a contest, 12 o'clock at night. We would have a contest of who could eat the most chicken. And he always won, but it was fun and very tasteful. A free meal, all right? So yeah, I enjoyed him immensely. But he was instrumental in telling us, now it's 15 of us in family, and he told us, he said, you're going to go places, you're going to do things, great things. And he was a very instrumental person in my life. Before we even got our license, he was the one that took us everywhere. Eastview Mall was not too far, and he had patience enough to wait for us to come out of the mall. And yeah, that's a great fond memory that I have of my brother. He was Private Roderick Mitchell Rumpf.
And if you could say anything to them right now, what would you say?
I would say I love you immensely, and I miss you tremendously. Thank you for all the gems and the tools that you have given me. I utilize them to the best of my ability every day I wake up. So thank you for being a part of my life.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, that is, a wonderful thing. They sound like wonderful people, and they sound like they've really impacted your life in a really good way and in a strong way. So, I can understand how it'd be very hard to lose someone who's been so instrumental in your life and in your family's lives.
Yes, it was very emotional for me, for my brother, because I was in 12th grade when he deceased, and he drowned in our pool. I was getting ready to graduate high school. So, final exams and all of that, right?
Yes.
It has literally still affected my life to the point where I wouldn't get in a swimming pool. I'm still right now trying to learn how to swim after that. And I learned how to float a month ago. I'm so excited and proud of myself. My daughter lives in Texas, and we went to visit her. And so we had time on our hands just to do fun things. And that was one thing that I was able to do. My baby daughter and my other daughters tried to teach me how to swim. Unfortunately, I have 2 left feet or something. I don't know. My hips ain't working right. No. But they taught me how to float and to go down under the water and to be comfortable in the water. So I'm moving slowly but surely, and prayerfully, I will accomplish that desire to learn how to swim on my own.
Well, that is a wonderful thing. Congratulations on that, because definitely, with something as scary as that, for you to get to that point, that is a monumental, I feel, feat. So that's a great thing that you've done. And kudos to your family and your daughter, for helping you with that too.
Yeah, thank you so much.
In your story, you talk about unhealthy grieving and how it will come when you least expect it. Can you define what you mean by unhealthy grieving?
Well, I'm a licensed evangelist, and I deal with a lot of people on different levels. And some people choose to hold on to their pain. And when you hold on to pain and do not work through pain, that's considered unhealthy grieving. A lot of people still cry and mourn and weep. And I'm not saying don't cry, mourn, and weep. I'm saying take your time to heal and to work through that pain, and do not allow yourself to become stuck. Do not allow yourself to become paralyzed to the place where you can no longer be productive in society. And there is a lot of people, unfortunately, that are depressed. They go into various health issues because they cannot find the tools to work through their pain, anguish, and their loss for whatever reason. A lot of times it's unforgiveness. Like, a lot of people deceased before straightening things out, and how do you get forgiveness from a deceased person? It is possible to do that. Louise Hay, if you've ever heard of her, she has various products. You've heard of her? Yeah.
Wonderful.
She's powerful, dynamic. And I recommend anybody that's going through a grieving or any trauma or any pain to purchase her. I went to Barnes and Noble years ago and found her when I was working some stuff out with my parents and with other people, with my ex-husband. You have to deal with stuff. You can't let it just have its way and wreak havoc over your life. A divorce is a death, unresolved issues with relatives, with family and friends. It's major. It's nothing to, ignore. You have to deal with this stuff. And so Louise Hay was very instrumental in my road to recovery of, healing self and healing from others. I hope I answered your question.
You did, because I think that's, something that we should all be aware of, because I'm sure there are many people out there who feel like, yes, I've grieved, I'm done, I'm over it, everything is fine. But when it comes to the friends knocking on the door, hey, you want to come out with us? No, I want to stay in. The phone rings, you don't want to answer it. Dinner time comes, you're not hungry, you don't want to eat, you just want to go to bed. And you say, I'm just tired. That's why I slept for, 15 hours out of the day. But it's true that there are a lot of unhealthy grieving that maybe we as people just don't realize that we're stuck in that mode. And so we don't know what it is.
Exactly. And it goes into other areas of your life. All right. If you don't move that pain, it's going to live and fester, and it's going to, how you see veins?
Yes.
It's going to infiltrate other areas of your life and literally paralyze you, where you will no longer be yourself. I know someone very close to me that allowed that to happen to them. And then you have to go to therapy and you have to do so much. So what I recommend as a shiftologist, I recommend you to move through your pain as quickly as possible, covering all 9 bases. And sometimes you will revert, but go through that cycle again and do the homework so you can be the best you possible.
Thank you very much. Definitely those 9 tips. I know the 9 different stages. You do mention them in the book, they're towards the back of the book, but for anyone who's reading this book or is going to purchase this book, please don't skip those steps, because really, to be a complete and whole you need to go through and, complete all those steps. Whether, you're comfortable with it or not, you need to do that and to get through all those steps in order to come out and be a better you on the other side. I'd like to ask Ivy, if you're, a couple of questions here. I see that as a wife and a mother of 4 sons, you're an ordained minister, an author, a TV and a podcast host, plus a transformational life coach. How do you find time for all that?
Well, all of the sons are older of age, out of the home, so we're good. My baby just left for Job Corps maybe 5 weeks ago, so they're out of the house. My husband was joking a couple of weeks ago. He's like, man, I got to get on your calendar, huh? So I do, use my calendar to keep me organized. I love being busy. It just seems like the more I do, the more I go, but I enjoy every minute of it.
In your bio, you declare it's time for women to reclaim their voice, power, authority, life, and joy. Do you feel that you've reclaimed yours?
I most certainly have.
And
Yes.
was it easy to do, or was that something that, took a while?
If I go back, it took some time, some years, to go through the healing process of abuse. It takes time. I mean, it's definitely a process, but as I got closer, and then when I wrote my book, Expose It, I was healed at that point, and God had given me the boldness just to get out, let people know it's time to expose it, stop hiding and running, and confront those issues. Just as Sandra just said, we must deal with those issues, those painful places that we go through in life.
That is very true, whether we want to or not. Again, it's something that in order to become complete and whole, in the end, there are things that, that they're painful, but we have to push through in order to become the best that we can be. And there are many women who build walls to hide their trauma. How were you able to confront and expose yours?
Actually, as years went by, I would say I was molested, but I never went into full detail of exactly what happened to me until 2021. And I'm like, it's like a lifetime, for some people. That is a lot of years to hold on to that. But as of today, I have no shame, no guilt, no condemnation. It was something that happened to me. I have nothing to fear. I use my story to help others to share their story so that they can start their healing process.
And how light, you begin to feel when you're able to kind of let go of that excess baggage. I think of it as like that man, and I'm sorry, I don't know his name, but so it's like a statue of the man. He's like holding up the world. It's kind of like, I think we as women, we're expected to just not say anything, carry it on, just keep pushing forward, and, it's nothing to be upset about, it's no things are too great, and you got to hold on and be strong for everybody and carry all that. And how great it feels when you're able to finally get comfortable enough where you can say, all right, this is what happened to me. And you share bits of your story. And then suddenly the burden is so much lighter. If I'm
Yes.
not walking stooped over, but you're standing up and you're kind of proud, that, wow, I've gotten through that. What's next?
Yeah. Yes. It's like own who you are. It's a part of your
Yes.
story. Yes.
In the New King James Version of Ecclesiastes, it says, a time to be born and a time to die. Why is there such a taboo when it comes to talk about death and dying?
I would say fear. Man doesn't like to think about that in general. We think we're going to live forever. I mean, but we're only fooling ourselves. I mean, we all had a day to be born, and there is a day that we're going to breathe our last breath. So it's part of the life cycle.
Definitely. And I think, or at least in my time of growing up, people were afraid to talk about death or to talk about someone and think of death because you thought, well, it's going to happen. If I say it, it's going to happen. So if I don't say it, if I don't deal with the fact that they're ill or they're getting older, then it won't happen. So we kind of are afraid to put it out there for fear that the universe is going to say, oh, that's what you want. Okay, here, we're going to give it to you. So people get afraid. And it's, I think, I know at least in my family, like my mom was very ill when I was young and there wasn't a lot talked about it. And, once she passed away, there's not a lot that I personally remember about, afterwards, but it was like something that you didn't talk about. People were afraid to talk about it. They just didn't want to. And you just had to, keep moving as if everything was good. And so I think we learned that, when our parents and our grandparents don't talk about death and discuss things, it's kind of like, oh, well, we're not supposed to talk about it either. And it kind of just that cycle, I think, just kind of continues in that way.
Yes, that is true.
I have a question for everyone. And it goes like this. How many times have we promised family and friends we will be by their side forever, only then to find that whether we're angry at them or whether life gets in the way, the only time we're going to connect with them is at a funeral? What can we do to make time or amends before it's too late?
I would start first because my mom and I, we were planning a trip to go spend Christmas in South Carolina for December, but she was passed away in November. Take the time, make the time to spend with your family, your loved ones before they pass away, because we do not know when we are going to leave here. No one knows. So time and life is precious. Let's not take it for granted and just do what we got to do as a family, stay in touch with one another.
Would anybody else like to add to that?
Yeah, I will add to that. My story is a reconnection story and then a passing of my mom story.
Yeah.
So I was resilient in getting in touch with my mom again as a grown adult because I didn't have her in my life. So me putting that effort, because in my own story that I'm going to write about that, it was failed attempts at making that connection. And so we have to be intentional. We got to put effort into it, because in my story, my mom was only with me for 4 years before she passed away. So had I not put in the effort to connect with her, and it was over a few years, had I not put in that connection, that effort, then she would have passed away and I would have been none the wiser. I would have been even more sick because other family would have told me. So yes, we have to make it intentional, and we have to put aside our time and be there for our family and hold on to your words. If that's what you say you're going to do, then hold on to it.
That definitely is a good point. I feel that, that everyone is right, make the time and do the best that you can. And, if there's grudges and things, try and work them out, because again, you never know, when things are going to happen, and you plan and think you're going to see them again, and that might not happen. And so it's kind of good to make those amends, as soon as you can. Katrina Rudolph, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I was going to piggyback off of that. With that intentionality, with me, I have such a busy schedule also. So you have to schedule, just like you would schedule your vacation time or a doctor's appointment time or whatever. If that's what it takes, you have to schedule that time to reach out to your loved ones, family, friends, etc. And holding on to grudges is only going to cause self-harm. When you internalize those negative feelings, it messes with you emotionally, physically, spiritually. So you definitely absolutely need to express yourself. And if you need to speak with someone to express hurt feelings or any unresolved conflict, and if the other person isn't ready to receive yet, sometimes you have to still say, well, I have something that I really need to express to you. Can we set up a time so that, the person can express themselves? And if the other one still is not willing, then it can be very therapeutic for you to still write down all of those feelings on a piece of paper so that you can get it out of you and off of you and release it from yourself and still forgive the person, even though they might not be willing to engage with you to find out what matters. But the next moment isn't promised. We say tomorrow isn't promised, but the same day, the next day is not promised. So we really must be very intentional in following up with those things so that we can be free and not feel bound and regretful for missed opportunities.
Yes, definitely. And I think, again, a very good point of getting it down and writing it out on paper, because you can really then, if you held it in and said, well, they don't want to talk to me, I don't know what I did, I'm trying to make amends, you spend all that time worrying about it, it still, is unresolved. So writing it out on paper is kind of a good way. And even maybe writing them a letter, and even if you don't mail it, the point is you write out and you've said what you needed to say to make yourself, feel better and more whole, and to kind of get it out. So great suggestion. Thank you. Katrina Clark, I'd like to go back to you for a moment, if you don't mind, and have you tell us about Louisa 57, what that's all about.
Yes, Louisa 57 is a business dedicated in memory of my mom. As I said earlier, she passed away. She passed away in 2014. My mother suffered with mental illness, which was why I was not raised by her. Why almost all my childhood up until my early adulthood, I didn't have my mom in my life. So after connecting with her and being on her team to help her with her, I was on her advising team because once I connected with her, she was in a mental health facility and I was on her advising team. And so I became more aware of mental illness and just the effects of it, and then dealing with my own issues and things like that. So when she passed away, my business is named in her honor. My mom's middle name was Louise, and she passed away a few months before she turned 57. So she was very, very young. I wanted her to have a legacy. And then she was not able to do so in her lifetime. So I'm doing that in her honor.
And it sounds like a wonderful way to honor her, and a phenomenal group and organization that you have. And Sandra had a question here. I just want to go down and read. And 1 second here. But she asked, what is something that you learned from her journey?
My mom's family life is, I believe, because mental illness was not only her, she was one of, I can't remember, more than 13 children. But in that home, a lot happened. 2 children passed away. One other child accidentally killed another one. My granddaddy was an alcoholic. So it was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of trauma, unresolved trauma. And then for certain communities, in particular, the African-American community, generation after generation did not deal with trauma, did not deal with mental health or anything like that. So for my mom, because she didn't start getting help, I think, into her late teens. Family couldn't deal with her. So she was in and out of mental health facilities from her late teens all the way up until she passed away. So what I learned from that is that mind your mind is what I say now, my actual business tagline. We have to take time to intentionally process what we're thinking, how it's making us feel, and then analyze why. Why are we feeling this way? What is it tied to? Is it something that we can resolve on our own? What is it that we're constantly taking in a lot of negativity just being in the world in general? What are we doing to process that information and just giving us time, ourselves time to just be still and release things, and to actually go to therapy? Because like Sandra was saying earlier, I didn't process my mourning for a while because it was a lot that I was going on at that very same time. I was the oldest of all the children. I had to travel 5-6 hours to come up here and help my mom with her funeral arrangement. It was just a lot that was put on me. And then life happened within two weeks and 30 days after that I was just in a spiral. And so I didn't process that for a while. And every February I would be sick as I don't know what, because we met in February and then she passed away in February. And so every February for years, I would be sick as I don't know what. But I learned that I need to deal with my own issues, my own trauma, and process things. So my mom showed me that. She doesn't know it, of course, but she did show me that.
Thank you. It sounds like, she was able to help you in a lot of ways. I'm sorry that, the time that you had together was so short, because, you were just getting to connect with her and to kind of get back to, having some sort of relationship, which must have been hard because the relationship was severed at the age of 7. And then you have all that time in between. And then it's kind of like, in order to find her, you have to go back to your family, which had caused a lot of trauma, to try and find her. So I don't know, I would assume that there would have been a lot more trauma, or a lot more fears with having to go back, to your family and say, all right, now I want to find mom, when you're trying to kind of distance yourself from all of that and the negativity. And one of the women here, Victoria, asked a really good question. And she says, right here, she says, what are ways that we can block negativity living in today's atmosphere where negativity is almost a trend?
So you have to intentionally silence yourself from it. You have to intentionally go somewhere where you are not influenced by negativity. Sometimes you have to get away from people. You have to turn off the TV, turn off your cell phone, listen to meditative music. I have a very heavy prayer life and meditation life. And then I write out things. Writing is, who is that? Katrina Rudolph. Writing is very therapeutic. Sometimes you have to write out what is negative or how you're feeling. And then sometimes just putting it on paper and you start looking at it, you're like, why am I thinking like that? Why am I feeling that way? We all have to deal with the world. We all know certain things are going on in the world, in the atmosphere. We do have to deal with that, but we also have to get ourselves away from that. God didn't want us to live under being afraid. He didn't give us a spirit of fear. So we have to know who we are, and that takes time getting to know yourself, where you are, your connection with God. My connection with God is like this because of all that I've been through. And then I sit back and I analyze things. I was like, I'm only here right now because of God. Because of God. Because when there's negativity, that means that you know what is good. In order to see what is dark, you know what's in the light. So you got to intentionally take time to focus on what is good and what is in the light.
And she has one other question that I would like to ask you. And it
Okay.
says, can you speak to all the siblings that took the oldest? Can you speak to all the siblings that took the oldest sibling role?
Speak to all the siblings that the oldest sibling ruled.
Can you speak to all the siblings that took the oldest sibling role?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
And Victoria, if you'd like to maybe elaborate on that question a little bit more. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Being the main one to handle all responsibilities, etc. Okay, I see it popping up now.
Okay, yeah, because that's not on my end, but okay, thank you, yes.
Okay, so being the oldest is it's a job. It is definitely a job. And then along with being the oldest, additionally, sometimes there's hostility from other siblings. My mother, in that situation, my mother did leave me in charge with her medical professional team, and then I was the point of contact for anything concerning her. And so that did cause some friction between a couple of siblings, and it brought about different things that shouldn't have happened at the time. But at the same time, it is an honor too, because for me, my mother had a relationship with one of my sisters, and she had more of a relationship with one of my brothers because they were up here in the Northern Virginia area. So for me to be down in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and had to travel 5-6 hours to see her, and then be, I guess because of me being the oldest and being a responsible one as she deemed it, that's an honor. It really is an honor. I had not thought about that until right now, but that is an honor to say, hey, I know that you can handle it. You have my best interests at heart. And I think sometimes that does cause a little friction with other siblings. It can in some families, in some situations. And it did with mine, but at the same time, I held firm to it. I got all that was needed from the medical team. I signed off on all the papers, and had I not done that, then it would have delayed the process of everybody coming together and having the funeral service that we had.
Did you find at times when you were making decisions on her behalf that maybe your brothers and sisters or other family members would say, well, you didn't consult us first, or we don't think you should do that, you should have done this? And how did you handle that?
Yes, and especially during that time, it was all my mom's children had to sign off on a death certificate. So 3 of us came together to do it, and then one of us just was adamant about not doing it. That was supposed to be done before the funeral service. It didn't get done until the funeral service when everybody was there and all the children were there. It had to get done. I mean, I was the first to sign it, and I was the one that was corresponding with the funeral service team to let them know it's in the works, it's in the works, it's going to get done. And at the same time, I was dealing with that sibling that was just causing a whole lot of trouble at the time. Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
You did, because I think sometimes, you said it very well, that it's an honor, but there are times where people don't feel that it's an honor. And I know, like, when my grandmother was getting older, and she was definitely, from her thinking was, from long ago, and God love her, but as she was getting older, she made my oldest brother the one who was going to take care of all her bills, and anything that she needed, she'd call him on the phone and say, you have to handle this, you have to do this, do that. And after a while, it got to the point where he was like, okay, he had enough. And so he winded up going from Massachusetts and moving to California. And so he was available by phone, but he wasn't there when she said, can you drive me here now? Instead of calling, I lived maybe a half an hour away from my grandma at the time, but she always believed the man should do everything. So she would always call him, always ask him to take care of everything. And if I'd call, no, it's okay. He's gonna do it. And so that put a lot of pressure on him that after a while, he didn't want. So I can see where some people don't think of it as an honor. They think it's just another thing out of all the responsibilities I have and the things I'm supposed to do that I have to do. But to really be involved in your mom's life like that, from when she was ill right up until her final moments, and to be able to help her and make sure that everything was done right, and the way that she needed to be is definitely an honor, and it was great for your mom to have someone that was so caring and that paid attention to detail and did everything that she asked and was able to help her, during times and maybe she wasn't able to, answer the doctors or to say, or to remember, or to be clear on what it was that she needed. And so you knew all those things and you were able to help her. So that definitely, I think, is an honor, definitely an honor to say the least. I'm just going to scroll down just for a second, because I think there might be some other questions here, and I don't want to skip anybody's questions. Now, did you feel sometimes that you were taking the brunt of everything to shield other family members?
Oh, yeah, there were times, yes, because especially my mother was in a mental facility, but then she wouldn't be near different times because she had the liberty to say, okay, I'm fine, I'm stable, I'm ready to leave, even though we all knew that she wasn't. She did that several times she did that. And the medical team would call me. I'd be at my desk working and they would call me, and I would just hold it for a while. I wouldn't let the family know, because my mom, she got arrested different times. She got into fights. When she wasn't at the medical facility, she wasn't taking her medicine. And then she had a payee, so she didn't have money. It was just like she would just be out there in the world like a lost child. And so there were times when those situations were going on that I wouldn't tell family. I mean, after telling family so many times, it's like, don't even say anything right now. And then I would tell them after the fact, maybe of a few days, if mom hadn't returned to the facility after a few days, then yeah, I would tell family that.
Because sometimes I think it's great to keep them abreast of certain things, but you don't have to tell them every little thing, because then they worry, and then they'll call, and then they'll check, and then they'll try and handle something that how to handle and is going to be resolved. So not everything do they need to be burdened with or worried about, because she may very well come back to the facility, and then everything's maybe not 100%, but she's at the facility and they're taking care of her. So for that part, it's good. Let's see. In your story you talk about growing up in a household that was abusive and not loving. And at one point in time, you say, just learning how to form relationships was a battle. How did you
Mhm.
overcome that?
Haphazardly. Haphazardly. I up and left the home that I was in a few months before I turned 19, I believe. And I stayed, moved in with a coworker, and it ended up not being a good thing. And then I ended up moving with another friend, and it was okay. And then I ended up moving in with someone who was a good friend for a while, and I ended up becoming her godmother to her children. And then just through life, I mean, even now today, I have different friends, and then I sit back sometimes and I be telling myself I don't have friends, but yet and still I do have friends, because I did not have friends when I was a child. Even when the home I was in, I was still the oldest. I was the oldest of 3, then it ended up being the oldest of 5, and then it ended up being the oldest of 7. I was always the oldest. So being someone that was always responsible was my life. That was my life. I'm always responsible. I don't get to sit back and have fun and just hang out and things like that. But over time, especially as I was raising my daughter, I realized the need to have friends, because my daughter, she was the only child, and all her friends would come to my home. I was the mom that took in all the children. And so seeing her have friends would make me sit back and be like, wow, that's something that I really, really missed growing up. So over time, I developed friends with people. People could always talk to me, but actually having friends is something that I had to develop. And of course, I was married and then divorced, and then been divorced for like 8, 9 years now. And so even romantically, that's still a struggle for me, because the home I was raised in, there was constant arguing. And I always said, I don't never want to be married. I don't never want to be married. And I didn't have boyfriends or anything like that until after I left home. And the first boyfriend that I had, I ended up getting pregnant by. And so it's been a journey, but I have learned the qualities of what makes a friend, and I've also learned to be a friend. And they say, you want a friend, you have to be a friend. And so I had to learn how to be a friend, and not someone that's always like trying to guide someone or soothe and things like that, to just be a friend.
And you make a good point about going out and, finding friends, making friends, other than just people that like maybe you work with, that you talk to all the time, or the cashier at the supermarket. Hey, how you doing? It's nice to see you again. And then that's about it, because eventually your children, they get older, they grow up, they wind up having families of their own. And then suddenly that empty nest syndrome, you find you're the only one in the nest.
Yep. I went through that too.
Yeah.
Went through that too.
So I haven't gone through that yet, but my daughter still lives with me, but she's away for like a week and a half helping a friend move. And I do find that, wow, I go to work and I come home and it's me. And then I get up in the morning and I go back to work, and I talk with my coworkers and things, but I'm older than, a lot of my coworkers. So I come home and it's me. So it's like, I try and find other things to do to keep myself busy, so that, when my daughter's going out, it's not like she feels like she has to say, Mom, you want to come with me? That she can actually go and have her time, and I can go and have my time, and it's, it's all healthy.
Yeah, it's a learning process, believe me. That's when I was forced to learn about how to make friends. My mother had passed away. I went through my divorce, and then my daughter graduated and moved out, and I was just there.
And that must have been a very hard time for you, but definitely, as you're showing, it can happen. To anyone who's listening, if that's something you're going through right now, please know that, it's a step in the right direction to make friends. And you may make some friends and they're not perfect. And so you kind of let some slip away, kind of like holding the sand in your hand, and that which stays with you are the ones that you're meant to keep. And, I feel God never puts people in our lives unless we were meant to meet them and have some kind of like learning experience from it. And some will stay with us and some will go, but it can happen. And having friends is so important to our growth and, to our health. I'm
Indeed.
gonna switch gears here for a minute, if you don't mind. I'm gonna pick Miss Katrina Rudolph because we've been having a great time, but I didn't want you to think I had forgotten you, Katrina. And I know you had a beautiful story to tell about your mother-in-law, who you called your mother in love, and that she had
Yes.
tremendous impact on your life. What do you miss the most about her?
Just hearing her stories about how she grew up and just different life experiences that she had. And she had such a wonderful sense of humor, loved the Lord. And I just enjoyed how she would get on the floor and play with the children, and just like crawl around with them. And she was just always just such a pleasure and just such a loving person. And when well, she was living in South Carolina, and when each of our children were born, she came up and spent at least a month or more with us just to help out, but not in an intrusive way or anything, just really loving and respectful, and really wouldn't let me do anything, but I didn't mind because I was tired and trying to take care of the babies, breastfeeding them, and that takes a lot out of you too. And it was a lot, but she would even fuss at my husband for me if I needed her to.
Yeah.
So that was just wonderful. She was just such an awesome person, knew everybody, loved everybody. Yeah, that was a tremendous loss.
And, she sounded like a wonderful woman, because when you think about it, I think a lot of times between what we see in television or what we hear from other people's experiences, that when the mother-in-law gets involved, there's always some kind of tension. She's always trying to take her son back. She's getting in the way, and people, panic. Like if the mother-in-law says, I want to help, they think, oh God, no, I got this, I can do this. But really, whether it's your first child, your third, or your ninth child, it's kind of like, it is a lot to do. And they say, sleep when your child's sleeping. Well, your child may sleep for a half an hour at a time. So sometimes you really do need someone else to come and to help you with that. And it sounded like she was very loving and giving, and your children really loved her. And, the fact that she was willing to say, hey, sit down for a minute and rest. I'll cook. You take a nap, I'll take care of the kids. I'll do this. I'll help with the housework. And even whether it's for a month or two, the point is the help was there and the genuine love,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It got to the point that my coworkers knew that she was in town. She would bake cakes and say, here, take that to work. This one lady said that one of my coworkers was saying that, I heard about, she was Caucasian, and she was saying, I heard that some African-American families will prepare their collard greens with smoked turkey. Can you ask your mother-in-law to make that? So I told her, and she made a big pot, and I brought it into work. That particular coworker, several others enjoyed several dishes that she prepared, but her lemon cake was the #1 hit. And I'm really honored and blessed that she shared that recipe with me, and I will pass that on to my daughter. Oh, and just to clarify from the beginning of the show, you said 3 daughters. I have 1 daughter and 2 sons.
I am so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, but I'll definitely pass that recipe along.
And I think too, when we have recipes like that we cook, reminds us, it brings memories back of them and the time that we spent together. And so it's kind of like a recipe of love that, you can pass down to your children so they can have memories of you making it. And, you can tell stories, while you're cooking about her and the things that she used to make. Someone had a question here, and it said, who was the first one to know when she passed away, and how did you break that news to your children and your loved ones?
Oh, that question was for me. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Who heard the news first? We were right there. As I said, she was living in South Carolina, but she ended up passing away from stage 4 breast cancer. And as she started to just be more medically needy, we moved her up here to Rochester, New York, and moved her in our home. She had her own room, a full bathroom. Everything was accessible. I helped set up her medical appointments, transported her to and from. And when she passed that morning, myself and my husband were right there at her bedside as she took her last breath. And that was, as I speak of in the book, it's different because I am a registered nurse, and working and being around families and the patients as they transitioned, and then versus being with someone so close, it's totally different experience, mentally, and you're prepared mentally as far as like you see the different stages of death as the person progresses through that, but then to experience that as the family member and not the care, the medical provider, healthcare provider, is so different. But we were right there, and I have my family, my parents and my sister are online too. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I had a lot of support from my family and my husband's family too, just moving through the whole process. And as far, I think I saw in the question about telling the children, my sister went and picked up the children from school, and we sat in our family room, and well, all along we were kind of preparing the children to let them know that grandma was sick and it looks like she's going to go to heaven. And I describe a little bit of that in the book. And we raise our children in a Christian household and explain different things to them. So my youngest, who has special needs, when we did tell the children, and they said they did want to see her remains, her body that was in her bedroom. And my youngest, when he looked at her, and he just kind of smiled and nodded and said, "Oh yeah, she's okay." And we knew that they would be okay. And they grieved appropriately, cried and all that, but just the resiliency of children and the way they kind of bounced back. And even now, it's been several years, and they can speak fondly of her, and, "Oh yeah, I remember when grandma did this, and I remember when grandma did that." And they'll look at pictures and different items that she had, a stuffed animal, and other toys and things that she had. And I'm glad that they were able to understand, and that we were able to have the wherewithal to really help them and nurture them in that process. And I think, did I answer the question? I don't know
You
if I
did.
rambled on.
And I wanted to say something about that too. Like we had talked about earlier about the taboos around death and dying. And I think this really breaks that when you're able to talk to your children about it honestly, help them prepare, continue her memory, and continue to talk to them about it, and remember funny things, and they're able to come to you and ask questions and talk about it. I find that to be very healthy. There are so many stories I've heard of people who are grieving, and because they're so in their grieving, so stuck in that mode of the loss mode, that they can't talk to anyone about it, so they don't talk to their children about it. And as the children get older, there's so many questions that they have about their parents or their grandparents or someone that passed away, and they're afraid to ask because it was so traumatic for that person that they never spoke about it, and it was just something you never spoke about again. And I applaud you for that they were able to see her and touch her, and that you were able to share all those stories. And I even think it was your story, if I'm correct, a beautiful moment where you had stepped out of the room for a second, and then when you came back, there was a smile on her face.
Mhm. Yes, that was just awesome to see.
Yeah.
Mhm.
To know that she's at peace now and she's happy, and that was kind of her way of letting everyone know that she was good. But again, I applaud you on having such the courage, and to be able to talk to your children so openly about it, and to let them know that this is okay, that it's a wonderful thing, to be able to talk about it and to be open about it without it being something fearful and something that we're not supposed to talk about and keep quiet about. So and it helps them process, I think, a lot better. And it definitely you can talk about all the great memories and kind of honor her in that way. Every time you bake something that she made, or every time you talk about something she did, or something funny, or things that she would do with the kids, or what they remember. I think that's definitely very important. Okay, and I'm going to go back up because there's another question for you. And it says, how did you support your husband at that time? Oftentimes, women don't know how to help their husband through grief because we oftentimes don't see them grieve. Can you give the wives maybe some help or some ways that they can, support their husband? Some tips maybe that you might have?
Yes, well, I'll do my best with our interaction, because usually my husband is very like jokey and upbeat, and anyone who knows him, they know he's gonna crack a joke, do something to make you smile and laugh. And that time was very challenging because his father had passed away 2 years prior, and then his mother ended up passing away, and he did struggle and have a tough time. So when he did feel like saying something, or if he did make any comments or remarks, just being sensitive to what he needed, I would listen to him. And if he asked me, certain things, and I would tell him what I thought and offer my opinion. I think it was helpful in just in my career path, kind of knowing how to do the active listening and trying to be emotionally supportive, and then just praying for him and with him and just laying hands on him. Because I could tell when he, especially towards the end, when her breathing started to change, and we knew that we were getting pretty close, and he was very restless at times and wasn't able to sleep. And a few times he stayed downstairs to kind of listen out for her and make sure she was okay. And I came down and wanted to make sure, do you need anything? Do you want me to stay down here while you go and get in the bed and rest? Just doing different things, making sure that the basic needs are met, and then really knowing your husband and knowing the spiritual things and emotional supports. Just offer that. And sometimes it's just being quiet, just not doing anything, not saying anything, but just really being there. And and you can always ask too your husband, what is it? I feel like I need to do something. Is there anything that I can do? Sometimes there may be an answer. Sometimes they may not even know they need something, but not even know how to express what that need is. So you just have to be prayerful and present is the best that I can suggest to people.
And I must say, that really is an awesome question, because I think a lot of times, the men take it upon themselves to be the ones that are gonna do everything. I'm gonna take care of my wife and the kids. They see when you're upset or you're grieving, or when the kids are grieving, and they want to be there for everyone, and they try and pretend like they've got it all together and they hold it in. But a lot of times maybe we forget to actually say, hey, how can I help you? How can I be of service to you? What can I do for you? Let me take over a little bit. How about you relax? Tonight, I'll do this or I'll do that, because people just assume the men always have it together and they're the stronger one. And so therefore, we don't always think that, hey, maybe, they need to have some time alone, or maybe they just need to have someone to talk to. And whether it be through a counselor or through the pastor at church, that to open up and be able to talk about it, is going to be very helpful in the end to them.
Yeah.
So thank you for that question, because that is really something we don't want to forget, the men in this, because it's just, that was his mother. And as much as she was your mother in love and everything that she did for him, she was a phenomenal woman. That was his mother. And, it can be very hard losing both parents and trying to take that on yourself and process all that yourself and then still help your family out can be really challenging. So it's good to have some, ways to then to release and to be able to talk about it and to, help process everything that was going on. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
This is kind of a question to everybody, but what are some healthy grieving techniques that you have weaved into your lives? Anyone who would like to answer? Or is there no really technique to it all? It's just a day by day thing, maybe.
I will say it probably is a day by day thing, and also somewhat is tied to the relationship and the circumstances of the person passing away. Because we have each person up here that has a story of how someone passed away. And so the grieving is going to be, it's going to be different, but you need to grieve. So for me, and I can piggyback off what Sandra said, is to not delay it, to actually go through it, to sit down, be still or whatever, and go through it. And I know a lot of times jobs, I think they only give you 2 or 3 days or whatever, something like that. You may need to just use up your vacation time and grieve. So when I was, the initial for me was crying in between signing papers, talking on the phone. And then after the burial, I was laid up in my bed for 3-4 days or so. And I was married at the time too, but I just felt the need to get up and be wife and mom. And then I was serving in my church. I didn't serve in the church for like 2 Sundays, but I was a leader in the church, and I was getting texts asking when was I going to do this and do that. And so I just got back into the habit of just doing, just going and doing, going and doing. And I did that for years. And I did that for years, which led to me, like I said earlier, every February being sick and crying. I mean, I would work, but in between work, after work, I was no good to nobody. No good to nobody. I'd be trying to drive and just something would just, anything. My mom liked flowers. Valentine's was her holiday. We would celebrate Valentine's. I didn't celebrate Valentine's. My daughter loved Valentine's. I tried to do things for her. But it wasn't until I went to counseling. So some of us had to actually go get treatment, go get help. And we may need to just be still for a while and let it sink into your spirit and your mind that that person is no longer there. And then you adjust how you live with that person no longer there.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
I think laughing, remembering what they said or how they did something, talking about them often. With me, I have 9 children. So the ones in the house, they get to hear, oh my God, you never knew your grandma, but you just did such and such like your grandma, just keeping them alive. And Jackie used to make us laugh. She would find so much funny in every situation. And so I like to keep them alive and just to remember all of the good that you can remember about them, and just tell everybody about them. I never just let them rest, because I think they were important people, and the next generation needs to hear about them and who they were. And I even wrote a book about my mom. That's actually my first book when I lost my mom, because she handed me a book of poetry one day out of the clear blue when I was a small girl. And reading that poetry is what drove me to becoming an actual author. And now I'm a best time selling author. I don't know how many times. And so it's just a remarkable thing just to keep them alive. And I think you can heal daily when you do that, find the funny out of it, even if it's sad, like just keep them alive and keep, like, I post about my loved ones. I will actually Jackie, my sister that I talked about, her birthday is June 3rd. My son, I had a son on June 3rd. So he's like a constant reminder about her. I keep her alive. And then I had a cousin who was very dear to me that deceased her birthday was on June 3rd as well. And so I think we should still celebrate. Actually, and I just thought about this, last year, a thought came to my mind, and I called my sisters. I'm like, let's celebrate mom. Let's celebrate her birthday. Let's do a Zoom and just release balloons. And we did that. Like, we celebrated my mom and the memory of her. She's She birthed us into the world. So of course, I want to keep her alive. That's my advice.
I think one thing I wanted to comment on and say is that, you know, when someone passes away, you're going to have all these kind of different emotions and feelings. And you really have to not just sit and be still, but sit with your feelings, feel them, accept them. If you need to have a huge cry, ugly cry, have it, but feel those feelings and process that and allow to go through all that first, you know, before you can move on. I think that's very important. And I also know in one of the stories, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get the person wrong, but as soon as they passed away, it was like you were required to be at work, you were understaffed. There was no one there to help you. And so you had to go in and tell your husband, I'm sorry, I've got to go. And
Yep,
I
that was
really-
me.
Thank you, Katrina. I really feel like there should be something better in place. Like they'll give women time off, you know, when you have a baby, you know, they'll give you some time off before, after, however you choose it, when you're expecting. But when it comes to something like that, there really should be a thing where when something happens, the moment it happens, that you should be allowed, you know, to take time off or to have that time, regardless of staffing, to, you know, to be able to process and to be with your family. And if that means, you know, taking like personal time and taking 3 or 4 days or whatever is needed, that's definitely something I feel more jobs should be open to and give to, and not just assume that, well, she's always here and, you know, I've got to get my nails done, so I'm just going to ask her to come and she'll come because we know she will. That they would value their workers enough that if you needed that time where they can say, all right, in their head, they may be saying, God, it's going to be difficult, but we can work it. And yes, please take that time off. It does so much more for your own mental health and for your family's mental health when you can all be together. It's important to be together at that moment. There is a question that's in the chat here, and someone said, I don't want them to think that I forgot them. It says, can any author illustrate the pros and cons of preparing for family for the death of a loved one versus no preparation?
I can speak to that one. It's very important to share our wishes with our loved ones before that time comes. It makes the process smoother. You know, my mom, she did share her wishes with us, like, you know, what she wanted to wear. She wanted to police officer escort the coffin. I mean, she gave us details. I know some people that even already have the service written out. So now when the family comes together, they don't have to try to make all these decisions. There won't be any friction because one person want to do this, one person want to do that. So it is important. That's the pro to it. Talk about it. We can't run from death. I mean, we're going to die. We're not going to be here forever. So talk about it so we can alleviate the bickering amongst the family members. Let the family members know now, what are you leaving to them? All right, get that will together. Let everybody know what your final wishes are now before that time comes.
Yeah, I definitely think that is important because, again, like you all have mentioned, you never know when something is going to happen and when you're going to pass away. And if you don't have your wishes written down, you know, if you don't have it kind of written in writing legally somewhere about how you want this to be done and this to go to this person, that what happens, you know, with all those things that you say, I'm going to give this all to my daughter, and then you don't write that down. Everyone says, well, she never told us she was giving you everything. It can create a lot of friction. And two, you know, things won't go the way you want them to if it's not written down. And if you have any debt or other outstanding bills, and the state is very quick to, well, we're going to take everything because, you know, she has this debt. So it didn't matter what she might have told you before she passed away. If it's not written down, a lot of those things just don't happen. And it makes it very difficult for people who, you know, suddenly find out that, God, I didn't know that my mom had all this debt, or my dad or my grandmother or all these things. And I know, like with my stepmom, she's 83. she has some signs of dementia. And there was a point in time where she has to pay property tax. And for a while, she didn't pay her property tax. And they had sent her a note and said, hey, you have to pay this, even though the house was hers, they were saying, you have to pay your property tax, otherwise the house is ours. And my daughter goes over once a week to see her, and she and to do her food shopping and help her with things. And she happened to find this and thought, well, God, it says like $3,000 are owed. And she's like, I can't believe it's really that much. So she in turn, sent it to my sister, who is the one that's, kind of in charge of everything. And she was like, gosh, I didn't know that. I don't think that's correct. And she went in and found out that, yeah, that was true, that they were ready to take the house that she owned because she thought she had paid it, but she actually hadn't paid it. And it was just getting bigger and bigger. And one thing I didn't know, but maybe other people do not know, is that now any piece of mail that my mom gets, my sister actually gets a picture of it. So every time her mail comes in, every piece of mail that goes to my stepmom, my sister gets a picture of it too. So she knows that, okay, she's getting this bill. It must mean it's time to have it paid. So then she knows to check to see if, my stepmom has actually paid it or taken care of it, or something else came in, and then she can kind of see everything. So it's not like my stepmom puts it to the side, says she's going to handle it, but it gets piled under Time magazine or, other things, and then it doesn't get handled. So that's something, if people don't know, maybe to check out, so you always know, so that when something happens, there isn't this big giant debt and things that need to be taken care of that now have fallen on you.
Another thing that I want to add to that is, and I know Sandra, you do this, is to have life insurance policy.
Yes,
And to make sure you have your beneficiaries' information all up to date.
yes,
But my mom didn't have life insurance, and so that was another thing. We had to do a GoFundMe, had to talk to different organizations and stuff. I had to do all that. So that adds to the heaviness of dealing with death.
yeah,
So, and then make your family aware, this is your life insurance policy, they're the beneficiaries. Give information like that in advance. Like my daughter knows that she's on my policy, the insurance company called her and things like that. That's another, that was terrible. Going through that process was terrible for me, which is why I had become a life insurance agent as well. I'm not active, but yeah, I commend you, Sandra, for still doing that. But life insurance, we put insurance on our cars, put insurance on our phones. Put it on your life, value your life, because that's a big weight that'll take off of everything that the family is going to go through. And then someone asks about debt and things like that. They have life insurance. You have a decent life insurance policy. It'll take care of the debt, and you'll still have a good service as well.
yes,
Yes, I would like to just interject. Thank you so much, Katrina, for bringing that up. I just want to share a brief story with you. You never know when you're going to go. I didn't know I was a poet. Right? You never know when you're going to go. So it behooves you to get everything lined up so you won't have to leave the pressure to your loved ones, because it is a struggle within itself. They're grieving, plus they have to figure out all of the logistics of what's going to happen to you, where you're going to rest, and all of that. That's a lot of pressure. I'm going to share this story with you. I got licensed in Illinois and paid over $300 some odd to get licensed in Illinois. And just because this mom called me and said her son needed insurance. Well, he would never make himself available. The next call I got, he was shot dead. And there was no policy. And he left behind 4 or 5 children plus a wife. So that's why we are here. That life insurance exam is not easy. I'm just saying, when you become life insurance certified, you have to go through some strenuous stuff to do this. You don't just do it just to be doing it. We do it because we have a love and a passion for people, and we want to make sure you're going to leave your family intact after you're gone. Unfortunately, if something happens to you, they're going to be here. And how are they going to fare? That's the big question.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, because you don't know how they're going to fare in the end. So, you really want to have that out there. And in the chat, there's, for those of you who can see it, if you're interested in purchasing this book, several of the women do have PayPal, so you can purchase it through that. And you can also purchase it through footprintenterprise.com/products. But if you would like to purchase this book, please do. And, in the book, I must say, it's not just their stories and how they worked through this and what happened before and after, but there is a great section in the back where it gives you tips on, how to move forward, things that you should say. If it's a friend of yours that has passed away, what you should say and do, and things you should definitely not say or do. And I'm sure we've all, I can raise my hand, and I've probably done and said things, that people just aren't ready. You don't need to call them immediately on the phone and say, what can I do? Give them space, give them time. There's definitely a lot of good pointers, a lot of good tips there. There's definitely some scripture and things in the back, to help you get through and to, help you during the difficult times. And there's definitely a lot of great ideas and steps that you can take to help prepare before and after. So definitely, please buy the book, read their stories, and then hold on to the back of the book, because it's going to give you so much information that even if you don't feel you need it now, you never know when you're going to need it, and you will need it. So the best thing to do is just to hold on to it, and if somebody else needs the information, buy them a copy. Don't give your copy away, because it's definitely very helpful. I would like to say thank you, everyone. I'm sorry our time is up, but I thank you so much for everyone for sharing your stories and the wealth of knowledge that you gave us and helped us, through all of this. And thank you again for reminding me to please hit record. But I thank you for joining us. You can join us at any point in time, anytime there is a She Reads podcast. When the next one comes up, I will definitely be posting it, and I will let you all know who the author is and who's coming up. And if you know of anybody who's a woman, who's an author, doesn't matter age or topic or what it is that they write about, I would definitely be interested in interviewing them too. So you can always pass them my way. And before we round out the evening and close, does anybody have some words of inspiration or encouragement that maybe you can leave our viewers?
I just wanted to, if you don't mind, mention our other partner that's in this book. Her story is a phenomenal story, and I just don't feel comfortable leaving without bringing her up. Her name is Tammy Westbrook, and her story, Ivy, I don't know if you want to share her story with us, but she is another author in this book, and her story is worth you reading about.
Yes, her son got killed by the police. A horrific event, but like Sandra said, get the book. You will be encouraged and inspired by all of the stories. My words to the audience or whoever may be watching the replay is that, yes, grieving is tough. It's a part of life. You will get through it in time, but go through those steps and stages of grieving. Remember the precious moments, the laughter, the good times that you had together, and you will get through your grief in time.
And you will get through your grief in time together, to definitely talk about it. There's nothing wrong with talking about death and dying, but definitely support each other, talk to each other. And yes, definitely talk to your husbands, help them out along the way, or your brothers, any males in the family, help them along the way, because definitely you don't want to leave them out too. As much as they may, appear to be the rock in the family or, in the marriage, the point is that it's good to include them too and let them talk about it and grieve and, share their memories and things too. So definitely that's important. Thank you, everyone, for all of your stories and sharing. And yes, we didn't want to leave her out. Her story was definitely, a very horrific one, to say the least. And, she was trying to get answers in her story and she didn't. And I think that's, there's a type of closure there that you don't always get, as compared to maybe some of the other stories. And so we do feel for her, we are very sorry for her loss. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much to everyone who joined and who commented and, gave their information and opinion. It was wonderful to have you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay.